Ethan Harper wiped the last streak of condensation from the polished counter in the hotel's grand lobby, his sleeves rolled neatly above his elbows. The hum of the city outside pressed against the tall glass windows, a constant reminder that life beyond these walls moved faster than the one he lived behind the uniform. He adjusted his tie and glanced at the clock, 10:47 p.m. Only 13 minutes until the night shift officially ended, yet the guest's requests seemed to multiply as if sensing his fatigue. Carrying a tray stacked with freshly pressed glasses, he navigated the corridor with practiced care. Each step echoed faintly against the marble, a subtle percussion that seemed to amplify the tension in the air. Tonight, though, there was something different. Not the usual polite nods or distant smiles from the visitors, but an energy, unsettling, curious, almost magnetic that he paused outside room 1208, a suite on the 7th floor. It had been quiet until moments ago, when the subtle chime of the service call interrupted the low murmur of the hotel. The message was simple: please send someone to assist. Immediate attention required. Ethan's fingers hovered briefly over the door handle. The name on the screen was unfamiliar, yet something in the phrasing caught his attention, playful, confident, almost deliberately teasing that he knocked lightly, a polite rhythm that had never failed him before. "Good evening," he called, stepping back slightly. "How may I assist you tonight?" The door swung open, and he found himself facing two men who seemed to occupy the room like it was their own stage. Malcolm Bryant, taller, with an easy confidence, smiled faintly, his eyes tracking Ethan's movements. Beside him, Darius Cole leaned casually against the doorway, the dim light catching the angles of his face. Their presence was not threatening, but it was undeniably arresting. "Ah," Malcolm said, his voice low but clear, "we were hoping you could help us with something." There was a pause, deliberate, almost teasing, that made Ethan's pulse quicken. Ethan cleared his throat, fighting the unexpected flutter in his chest. "Of course," he replied, stepping forward. His professional composure was intact, though his mind swirled with unspoken questions. Why had they requested him specifically? What exactly did they need? The curiosity was uncomfortable but irresistible. Inside the suite, the atmosphere shifted immediately. The warm glow of soft lamps replaced the sterile overhead lights of the corridor, casting gentle shadows across the room. A low hum of music vibrated from hidden speakers, melodic but ambiguous, filling the space without demanding attention. Ethan set the tray down on a polished side table, careful to avoid the scattered glassware and plush cushions that seemed intentionally arranged, almost theatrical. "Thank you for coming so quickly," Darius said, a faint smirk playing on his lips. "It's rare to meet someone who responds so attentively." His words carried a subtle double meaning, and Ethan couldn't tell if the charm was genuine or deliberately provocative. Malcolm leaned against the edge of a leather chair, observing Ethan with an intensity that made him shift on his feet. "You work late, don't you?" he asked. There was no judgment, only curiosity, yet Ethan felt as though the question probed deeper than his job description. "I do," Ethan admitted. "It's part of the night shift. Quiet hours are the most manageable." He chose his words carefully, aware that every detail revealed, or concealed, something about him. Darius tilted his head, studying Ethan with a faintly mischievous smile. "Manageable, you say? Or perhaps, predictable?" The question lingered in the air, unspoken tension curling around it like smoke. Ethan's throat went dry, and he realized he was analyzing everything: the cadence of their voices, the subtle gestures, the easy confidence that radiated from both men. That he poured water into the glasses on the tray, deliberately slow, savoring the mundane motion to steady his racing heart. "Predictable can be comforting," he said softly. His voice sounded unfamiliar even to him, tempered with a caution he didn't usually feel at work. Malcolm stepped closer, just enough to enter Ethan's peripheral vision without touching him. "Comforting," he repeated, almost as if testing the word, testing the man. "Interesting choice." There was something deliberate in the way he emphasized the syllable, a playful tension that Ethan couldn't ignore. Darius moved to the window, drawing back the curtain slightly to reveal the city lights. "Look at it," he said, gesturing toward the sprawling metropolis below. "People rushing through lives they barely understand. And here we are, paused, observing. Isn't that thrilling? His tone was light, but there was an underlying weight that suggested more than casual conversation. Ethan nodded, unsure how much to reveal. He remained poised, professional, but his gaze lingered on the way the room felt charged with energy, like an unspoken game being played around him. His fingers brushed the tray, as if holding on to something tangible would anchor him to reality. The conversation shifted naturally yet subtly. Malcolm asked about Ethan's experiences at the hotel, his ambitions, his life outside the uniform. Ethan answered cautiously, revealing just enough to be human but keeping boundaries intact. Darius occasionally interjected, offering observations that were insightful yet teasing, each remark designed to provoke thought, curiosity, or perhaps something deeper in Ethan. By the time he finished arranging the glasses on the coffee table, Ethan felt both exhilarated and unsettled. There was a magnetic pull in the air, an attraction he could neither name nor resist. His professional instincts clashed with the undeniable tension, and a quiet question settled in his mind: what were they really after, and why him? Finally, Malcolm smiled again, faintly, a gesture that seemed to acknowledge the unspoken. "Thank you for your help tonight," he said. "You've been most attentive." Ethan nodded, heart still hammering, yet maintaining his composure. "Of course. It's my job." As he turned toward the door, he paused, glancing back one last time. Darius's eyes met his, and for a fleeting moment, the room seemed suspended in time. The night beyond the suite felt distant, the city lights below irrelevant. And yet, even as he closed the door behind him, Ethan's mind lingered on the encounter, the tension, and the questions that had no answers. Walking back down the corridor, he realized the night was far from ordinary. Something had shifted, subtly, irreversibly. And though his shift would soon end, he knew this evening, this meeting, would remain vivid in his mind, waiting, teasing, for what came next. The corridor outside room 1208 seemed quieter than usual, yet the echo of his own footsteps felt louder in Ethan Harper's ears. The hotel's night air pressed against him through the tall windows, but it did little to calm the fluttering in his chest. He tried to shake the lingering image of Malcolm Bryant's confident gaze and Darius Cole's playful smirk, yet both remained stubbornly vivid. Ethan returned to his station, arranging clean linens and restocking the minibar, but every movement felt deliberate, slow, weighted. His mind replayed the conversation from earlier, dissecting each word, each glance, each subtle inflection. The men's presence had been commanding, almost magnetic, and the polite professional mask he wore felt increasingly fragile. By 11:30 p.m., the hotel had quieted considerably. Only a few lingering guests murmured in the lobby, their voices low and indistinct. Ethan was wiping down the reception desk when his phone vibrated in his pocket. A text flashed on the small screen: "Could you return for a moment? We'd like to continue our chat. M&D." His breath caught. The initials left no doubt about the sender. He stared at the message, heart thumping in a rhythm he didn't recognize. Returning to the suite seemed reckless, yet the curiosity, the magnetic pull he had felt earlier, was undeniable. Ethan paused, tugging at the edges of his conscience. But professionalism demanded he obey. And perhaps, something deeper whispered in the back of his mind, "You want to know more." When he arrived at the suite again, Malcolm opened the door almost immediately, as if expecting him. Darius lingered just behind, leaning casually against the wall, a faint grin playing across his face. The room was bathed in soft, golden light, casting shadows that danced along the furniture. A record played quietly in the background, a melody that was both soothing and slightly haunting. "Ethan," Malcolm said, voice smooth, low, deliberate. "We were hoping you might join us again. Tonight seems conducive to conversation." He gestured toward the seating area. Ethan stepped inside, tray in hand, and placed it carefully on the table. His professional instincts battled with the awareness of the tension that seemed to thrum in the air, and he fought to keep his composure. "Conducive," he repeated, testing the word on his tongue. "I see." Darius chuckled softly, a sound that carried warmth but also challenge. "It's rare to meet someone so attentive," he said, voice dipping in a teasing cadence. It makes observing you all the more intriguing. Ethan's pulse quickened. He could feel the subtle currents of their attention, each look a delicate probe, testing boundaries without overt contact. His fingers fidgeted lightly with the edges of the tray, grounding himself in the mundane act. Malcolm leaned forward, elbows resting on his knees, gaze never leaving Ethan. "Do you often find yourself in situations that test your limits?" he asked. There was no judgment, only curiosity, yet the implication was undeniable. Ethan hesitated, weighing his response. "Limits can be ambiguous," he said carefully. "They depend on perspective." His voice carried a quiet steadiness he didn't entirely feel. Darius moved closer to the window, pulling back the curtain to reveal the city lights, twinkling like distant constellations. "Perspective," he said softly. "Yes. It's fascinating how one evening, one interaction, can shift everything we believe about ourselves." His words hovered between philosophy and provocation, leaving Ethan suspended in thought. Malcolm's expression softened momentarily. "You're more reflective than most," he observed. "I admire that. But tell me, do you ever wonder what it would be like to step outside the confines of expectation?" The question struck deeper than Ethan expected. He glanced down at the tray, pretending to adjust the glasses, yet his mind raced. Outside the confines of expectation. Did that mean the rules he followed, the job he performed, the life he led? Or something more? Darius's eyes met his, steady and probing. "It's okay to wonder," he said, voice low, almost intimate. "Even fleetingly. Curiosity doesn't betray integrity, it reveals it." Ethan swallowed, a lump forming in his throat. He wanted to respond, to speak, to explain that curiosity was not weakness. But words failed him, leaving only the subtle acknowledgement in a quiet nod. He realized that his presence here, this choice to return, already signaled a departure from rigid boundaries. The men's conversation drifted naturally, effortlessly, like a current pulling him in. They spoke in riddles, in philosophical musings, in soft laughter that suggested private jokes and shared understandings he could only glimpse. Malcolm asked about his childhood, his dreams, his fears, all the while maintaining a careful, compelling charm. Darius commented on his observations, noting small gestures, fleeting expressions, moments that revealed more than Ethan intended. Through it all, Ethan felt a strange exhilaration mingled with discomfort. His professional instincts whispered caution, yet an undeniable thrill coiled in his chest, refusing to be ignored. The boundaries he had meticulously maintained for years seemed porous, mutable, influenced by two men whose presence was both benign and magnetic. At one point, Ethan poured himself a glass of water, hands trembling slightly despite his best effort to appear composed. Malcolm watched, unspoken understanding passing between them. "Even small acts can be revealing," he said quietly. "A gesture, a hesitation, a glance, all speak volumes." Ethan's mind spun. Every nuance mattered, every movement carried weight, yet nothing overt occurred. It was a dance of perception, of tension, of unspoken connection. He realized that the evening was a test of sorts, of patience, of restraint, of understanding the subtle language between people who never explicitly state their intentions. Minutes stretched, measured by the low hum of the music and the occasional shift of a shadow across the room. Finally, Malcolm leaned back in his chair, eyes soft but focused. "You've been remarkable tonight," he said, a smile tugging at his lips. "Attentive, thoughtful, curious." Darius's grin mirrored Malcolm's, yet carried a note of mischief. "It's rare to find someone willing to engage without surrendering too easily," he added. Ethan felt a swell of conflicting emotions, pride, unease, exhilaration, caution. He nodded, unable to articulate the storm inside him. And yet, as he stood to leave the suite, he realized something undeniable: the encounter had changed something fundamental. He could not yet name it, could not yet understand it fully, but the pull, the tension, the unanswered questions would linger long after he returned to the quiet halls of the hotel. As the door closed behind him, the faint echo of their voices seemed to follow him down the corridor. He walked with measured steps, heart racing, mind swirling with curiosity and restraint. Something had shifted, subtly but irrevocably. And as he returned to the night's routine, Ethan Harper knew one thing with certainty: this was only the beginning.